My father handed my $50 million company to my brother with a single sentence. I'd spent 12 years building TechFlow from a garage startup to Silicon Valley's fastest-growing software company. Every patent, every client relationship, every breakthrough, my blood, sweat, and sleepless nights. But when Dad called the family meeting, his favorite child sat smirking beside him. "Michael will be taking over as CEO effective immediately," Dad announced casually. That's when they learned what happens when you betray the person who built everything. The champagne bubbles caught the California sunset streaming through TechFlow's floor-to-ceiling windows. 200 employees filled our open-concept workspace, celebrating the milestone we'd all worked toward for over a decade. $50 million in annual revenue. From a garage in Palo Alto to this gleaming headquarters in South Bay, every square foot represented a victory I'd fought for. To Rebecca Thompson, the visionary who made this possible. My CFO, Sarah, raised her glass, and the room erupted in applause. I smiled, soaking in the moment I'd dreamed of since I was 22, coding until my fingers cramped while my college friends partied. But as I scanned the crowd, my chest tightened. Mom stood near the refreshment table, beaming with pride, yet her eyes kept darting toward the elevator. Dad lingered by the windows, checking his phone instead of celebrating. And Michael? My 32-year-old brother was nowhere to be found. "Where's Michael?" I asked Mom when I finally reached her through the crowd of well-wishers. "Oh, honey, you know he's not really into these corporate things." She squeezed my arm, but her smile seemed forced. "He's proud of you, though. We all are." Dad approached us then, his expression unreadable. "Great party, Rebecca. Really impressive numbers." His words carried the tone of a polite stranger rather than a father watching his daughter's greatest triumph. "Thanks, Dad. Couldn't have done it without your initial investment." I kept my voice light, but something cold had settled in my stomach. "I was hoping Michael would be here. This is his company too, technically." Dad's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Actually, we should talk about that soon. Family business and all." He glanced around the room. "But not here. Not tonight." I wanted to press him, but Sarah appeared at my elbow with a group of potential investors who'd flown in from New York. Business first? Always business first. That's what Dad had taught me, after all. The party wound down around 9 p.m. As I gathered my things, I found myself staring at the framed photo on my desk. The three of us at my Stanford graduation. Dad's arm around my shoulders, Michael grinning beside us. We looked like the perfect Silicon Valley family. Successful tech entrepreneur dad, brilliant daughter following in his footsteps, and the easygoing younger son who'd find his own path. Except Michael had never found his path. After dropping out of UC Berkeley, he'd drifted through various creative pursuits. A failed food truck, a brief stint as a social media consultant, and most recently, something involving cryptocurrency that he couldn't quite explain. Meanwhile, I'd spent 14-hour days building TechFlow from the ground up. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. "Family dinner Sunday. Important discussion about company future. Don't bring work." I stared at the message until the screen went dark. In 12 years of building this company, Dad had never told me not to bring work to anything. Sunday arrived with the kind of oppressive heat that made even seasoned Californians complain. I pulled into my parents' driveway in Los Altos Hills, noting Michael's Tesla parked in his old spot. At least he'd shown up. Mom had prepared her famous pot roast, the same meal she'd made for every important family occasion since I could remember. But the dining room felt different somehow. Heavier, like the air before a storm. "Rebecca!" Michael jumped up as I entered, wrapping me in an enthusiastic hug. "Congratulations on the big 5-0! That's incredible!" His excitement seemed genuine, which only made the knot in my stomach tighten further. Michael had always been the charming one, the one who could talk his way out of anything. I'd been the responsible one, the one who delivered results. "Thanks, Mike. I'm glad you could make it to dinner, even if you missed the party." "Yeah, sorry about that. I was in meetings all day Friday." He grinned sheepishly. "Investor stuff. You know how it is." I didn't know how it was, actually. Michael had never successfully raised capital for anything. But before I could ask, Dad cleared his throat. "Let's sit down. Your mother went to a lot of trouble with this meal." Dinner conversation felt stilted, punctuated by long silences and the clink of silverware against china. Mom asked about my latest product launch. Dad inquired about our Q3 projections. Michael mostly stayed quiet, which wasn't like him at all. Finally, as Mom served her famous apple pie, Dad set down his fork and looked directly at me. Rebecca, you've done an exceptional job building TechFlow, beyond what any of us imagined when we started this journey. My heart began to race. Dad never gave compliments without a caveat. The company's at a critical juncture now. Scaling from 50 million to 100 million requires different leadership skills. More collaboration. Less. He paused, searching for the word. Less intensity. What are you saying, Dad? Michael shifted in his seat, suddenly very interested in his pie. I'm saying it might be time for a leadership transition. Someone with fresh perspective. Someone who can bring the team together without the pressure you've been carrying. The room started to feel smaller. Dad, I built this company. Every major client, every product innovation, And you've done brilliantly, but you're burned out, honey. Everyone can see it. The panic attacks, the insomnia. This job is killing you. I stared at him, feeling like I'd been slapped. Those were private conversations. How did you... Michael mentioned he was concerned about you. We all are. My gaze snapped to my brother, who couldn't meet my eyes. When had I told Michael about my anxiety? When had we even had a private conversation about anything deeper than weekend plans? I think, Dad continued, his voice maddeningly calm, that Michael should take over as CEO. You'd transition to Chief Technology Officer, focusing on what you do best, innovation and product development, less stress, more creativity. The words hit me like physical blows. Michael, CEO, the brother who'd never held a real job, never built anything, never sacrificed anything. This is a joke, right? My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. Michael doesn't know the first thing about running a tech company. Hey now! Michael finally spoke up, and there was something different in his tone. Harder. I've been studying the business for months. Dad's been mentoring me. I have ideas for streamlining operations, improving team morale. Studying the business? I laughed, but it came out sharp and bitter. Michael, you couldn't even remember our revenue numbers at Christmas dinner. You thought our enterprise software was an app. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Dad said firmly. This dismissive attitude. You can't keep treating family like employees, Rebecca. Family? I stood up so quickly my chair scraped against the hardwood floor. You want to talk about family? I gave up dating, friendships, hobbies, everything to build this company. I lived in that garage for 2 years while Michael was finding himself in Europe. I took salary cuts so we could hire better developers while he was buying vintage guitars he never learned to play. Rebecca, please sit down. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. No, Mom, I won't sit down for this. I turned back to Dad, my hands shaking. You're seriously going to hand my company to someone who's never earned $1 of revenue? It's not your company, Dad said quietly. It's a family company. I own 51%, you own 35%, Michael owns 14%, and as majority shareholder, I'm making an executive decision. The room went silent except for the tick of Mom's grandfather clock in the hallway. 14%. Michael owned 14% of the company I'd built with my own hands because Dad had gifted it to him on his 25th birthday. For motivation, he'd said then. You planned this, I said slowly, the pieces clicking into place. The mentoring, the questions about my stress levels, getting Michael involved in board discussions. This wasn't a family dinner. This was an ambush. Dad's expression didn't change. This is what's best for everyone. You'll still be well compensated, still integral to the company's success, just in a role better suited to your strengths. My strengths? I could barely get the words out. My strength is leadership. My strength is building something from nothing. My strength is turning ideas into $50 million in revenue. Your strength is technology, Michael said, and now his voice carried an authority I'd never heard before. Mine is people. Dad's right. The team needs someone who can unite them, not drive them like a perfectionist. I stared at this stranger wearing my brother's face. When had he become so confident, so articulate about business strategy? How long had they been planning this? The announcement will be made Monday morning, Dad continued. Michael starts immediately. You'll have a transition period to hand over CEO responsibilities while establishing your new role as CTO. And if I refuse? Dad's eyes hardened. Then you'd be making a serious mistake. This company is your life's work. Don't let pride destroy everything you've built. I looked around the dining room that had hosted so many celebrations of my achievements. The walls lined with family photos, including one of me holding TechFlow's first major contract. Mom sat frozen, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Michael avoided my gaze, suddenly fascinated by his dessert plate, and Dad watched me with the cold calculation of a man who'd just executed a hostile takeover. I need some air, I managed, heading for the back door. Rebecca, wait! Mom called after me. But I was already outside, gulping the warm evening air like a drowning person breaking the surface. I stumbled to the garden bench where I used to do homework as a kid, my mind reeling. 12 years. 12 years of building, creating, sacrificing. 12 years of being the responsible one, the successful one, the one who made the family proud. And in one dinner conversation, it was all being handed to someone else. My phone buzzed with notifications, text messages from my leadership team asking about Monday's announcement. Had they known? Had everyone known except me? I thought about the panic attacks Dad had mentioned, the sleepless nights spent coding, strategizing, worrying about every detail of operations. Was I really that broken? That difficult to work with? No, this wasn't about my mental health or management style. This was about something deeper, something that had been building for years while I was too busy succeeding to notice. I was the family cash cow, and now that the cow was fat enough, it was time for slaughter. Michael appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against the kitchen light. Becca, can we talk? I didn't look up. I don't think we have anything to say to each other. Come on, that's not fair. I never asked for this. Didn't you? I finally met his eyes. Tell me honestly, Michael, how long have you been talking to Dad about taking over? He shifted uncomfortably. A few months, but it wasn't like that. He approached me, said the company needed fresh leadership, someone who could handle the human side of scaling up. The human side. I laughed bitterly. You mean the side that involves actual humans who respect competence over nepotism? You're being dramatic. Am I? Michael, name our 3 biggest clients. Silence. What about our core product offerings? How many employees do we have? What's our biggest operational challenge right now? More silence. You don't know any of it, do you? But somehow you're qualified to run the company I built from nothing. I can learn. No. I stood up, feeling something crystallize inside me. You can't learn 12 years of experience in a few months of Dad's mentoring sessions. You can't learn the relationships I've built, the technical knowledge I've accumulated, the strategic vision that got us here. Michael's face flushed. Maybe if you weren't so condescending, people would be more willing to work with you. Did you ever think about that? Maybe Dad's right about your attitude problem. My attitude problem. I repeated the words slowly. Is that what we're calling ambition now? Work ethic? Refusing to accept mediocrity? We're calling it being impossible to please and harder to work with every year. The team walks on eggshells around you, Rebecca. Everyone's afraid of disappointing the perfectionist. His words stung because there was truth in them. I had become demanding, exacting. Every detail mattered when you were building something that could fail at any moment. Every decision could make or break years of work. But that's what leadership looked like. That's what building something meaningful required. You know what, Michael? You're right. I am impossible to please because I have standards, because I care about excellence, because this company isn't just a paycheck to me. It's everything I am. And that's the problem, he said quietly. You've made this company your entire identity. Dad and I are trying to save you from yourself. I stared at him, this person who'd shared my childhood, my family, my last name, but clearly shared none of my values. You're not saving me from anything. You're stealing everything I've worked for and calling it a favor. That's not. I want you to leave now. Rebecca, leave. Before I say something we'll both regret. Michael hesitated, then walked back toward the house. At the door, he turned back. For what it's worth, I really do think this could be good for everyone, including you. After he was gone, I sat in the darkness of my parents' backyard, feeling something fundamental shift inside me. The Rebecca who'd walked into this house still believed in fairness, in family loyalty, in the idea that hard work and talent would be rewarded. That Rebecca was gone. In her place sat someone harder, someone who understood that blood meant nothing when it came to power and money, someone who realized that building a company meant nothing if you didn't control it. I pulled out my phone and started making a list, patents filed in my name, key relationships that belonged to me personally, technical knowledge that existed only in my head, trade secrets and strategic insights that couldn't be handed over in a transition document. For 12 years, I'd thought I was building a family business. I was wrong. I'd been building my leverage. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office, staring at the wall of patents and awards that told the story of TechFlow's journey. Each frame represented months of work, countless late nights, problems solved and barriers broken. My name was on every single patent, my signature on every major client contract, my vision behind every product innovation. They thought they could just hand it all to Michael like passing down a family heirloom. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. By dawn, I had a legal pad filled with notes and my laptop open to 6 different browser tabs. The first call I made was to Jennifer Chen, the intellectual property attorney who'd helped me file our foundational patents 7 years ago. Rebecca, it's 6 a.m. on a Monday. Please tell me nothing catastrophic happened to TechFlow. Depends on your definition of catastrophic, I said, pacing my kitchen with a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. I need to understand something about patent ownership and corporate transitions. Jennifer's voice sharpened with professional interest. What kind of transition are we talking about? I explained the situation in clinical terms, keeping my emotions locked down tight. When I finished, Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. Rebecca, I have to ask. Are you considering what I think you're considering? I'm considering protecting my intellectual property and making sure I understand my rights. Nothing more. Okay, but be very careful here. Family business disputes can get messy fast, especially when patents and trade secrets are involved. Just tell me what I need to know about patent ownership and corporate transitions. Well, the patents filed in your name remain yours unless specifically transferred. Even if the company owns licensing rights, the individual inventor retains certain protections. But Rebecca, send me everything. Documentation requirements, transfer processes, what can and can't be assigned without inventor consent. I need to understand the full landscape. After hanging up, I called my therapist's emergency line. Dr. Martinez had been helping me work through the anxiety and burnout Dad had so kindly used against me in his coup. Rebecca, what's happening? I need an emergency session, today if possible. Something's happened with my family, and I need to process it before I make any major decisions. Can you give me a sense of urgency level? Are you safe? I looked around my pristine home office with its view of the bay and photos of TechFlow milestones. Safe. What a concept. I'm not in physical danger, but I think I'm about to burn some bridges, and I want to make sure I'm doing it for the right reasons. I have a cancellation at 10 a.m. Can you make it? While I waited for my appointment, I opened my laptop and began what I would later call the documentation project. Every client relationship that existed primarily because of my personal connection, every piece of proprietary code I'd written, every strategic partnership I'd negotiated personally, every trade secret that lived in my head rather than company databases. The list was longer than I'd expected. At 9:30, my phone started buzzing with messages from my leadership team. The Monday morning announcement was apparently happening right on schedule. Sarah from Finance. Emergency all-hands meeting in 10 minutes. Do you know what this is about? David from Engineering. Dad just called saying there's a leadership change? WTF is going on? Marcus from Sales. Please tell me the rumors aren't true. Michael Thompson as CEO? This has to be a joke. I turned off my phone without responding and drove to Dr. Martinez's office. Talk to me about what happened, she said once I'd settled into the familiar leather chair. I told her everything. The dinner, the ambush, Michael's transformation from failing dropout to confident CEO in waiting, Dad's clinical dismissal of 12 years of my life's work. How are you feeling right now, Rebecca? Angry, betrayed, but also clearer than I've felt in months, actually. What does that clarity tell you? I was quiet for a moment, really considering the question. It tells me that I've been living in denial, thinking that competence and hard work would be enough. That family meant something more than transactions and power plays. And now? Now I understand that this was always going to happen. Dad never saw me as his successor. He saw me as the bridge to Michael's succession, the person who would build something valuable enough to be worth handing over. Dr. Martinez leaned forward slightly. That's a significant realization. How does it change your perspective on your choices moving forward? I paused, feeling the words crystallize. I think I've been playing by rules that don't actually exist. Being the good daughter, the loyal family member, the grateful recipient of Dad's initial investment. But those rules were only binding me. They were never binding him. So what rules do you want to play by now? I met her eyes steadily. My own. The session lasted 2 hours. By the time I left, I had a clear action plan that felt both terrifying and liberating. Dr. Martinez had helped me understand that what I was contemplating wasn't revenge. It was self-preservation. There's a difference between burning bridges and simply refusing to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. I drove straight from therapy to TechFlow's offices. The parking garage felt different somehow, like I was seeing it through new eyes. My reserved spot near the elevator, the one with my name painted in neat block letters. How much longer would that nameplate stay there? The elevator ride to the 23rd floor gave me time to compose myself. When the doors opened, I could feel the tension immediately. Groups of employees clustered near the coffee station, speaking in hushed tones. Several people looked up as I passed, their expressions ranging from confused to sympathetic to openly worried. Rebecca! Sarah caught up with me before I reached my office. Thank God you're here. Please tell me you can explain what just happened in that meeting. What did Michael say exactly? That he was taking over as CEO effective immediately and that you were transitioning to a new role focusing on innovation and product development. But Rebecca, the way he said it didn't sound like this was your choice. I unlocked my office door, Sarah following close behind. It wasn't. Jesus Christ! What are you going to do? I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop, noting the 17 missed calls from family members. I'm going to think very carefully about my options. Sarah closed the door behind her. Rebecca, I need you to know that most of the leadership team is freaking out right now. Michael gave this speech about bringing fresh perspective and collaborative leadership, but she shook her head. He couldn't answer basic questions about our current projects. David asked him about the roadmap for our enterprise platform, and Michael literally said he'd get back to him after reviewing the documentation. What about the technical team? Revolt. Quiet revolt, but still revolt. David's already asking me about non-compete clauses and severance packages. 3 of the senior developers came to me asking if you were planning to start something new. Why, I looked at Sarah, this brilliant woman who'd taken a massive pay cut to join TechFlow in year 3 because she believed in what we were building. Hypothetically, if someone were to start a competing company, what would be the biggest challenges? Sarah's eyes widened. Hypothetically. She thought for a moment. Funding wouldn't be an issue for someone with your track record. The real challenges would be talent acquisition and client migration. Most of our key people have non-competes, but those are hard to enforce for genuinely innovative new ventures. As for clients, she paused. Rebecca, most of our major accounts have personal relationships with you that predate their contracts with TechFlow. Interesting hypothesis. Very interesting. Sarah sat down across from my desk. This hypothetical company, would it have room for a CFO who's tired of working for people who don't understand the business they're running? Before I could answer, my office door burst open. Michael stood there, slightly out of breath, his usual easy smile replaced by something harder. Rebecca, we need to talk. Now. Sarah stood up. I'll leave you two alone. No, stay, I said quietly. Michael, this is Sarah Kim, our CFO. Sarah, meet Michael Thompson, our new CEO. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Michael's jaw tightened as he realized I was making a point. I tried calling you all morning, he said. You missed the announcement meeting. I was in a pre-scheduled appointment, but I'm sure you handled it beautifully. Look, I know you're upset, but we need to start the transition process. Dad wants to see a timeline for knowledge transfer by end of week. Knowledge transfer. I repeated the words slowly. And what knowledge exactly are we transferring? You know what I mean. Client relationships, ongoing projects, strategic initiatives. Ah, I see. You want me to transfer 12 years of relationships and institutional knowledge to someone who, as of yesterday, thought our enterprise software was a mobile app. Sarah made a small noise that might have been a suppressed laugh. Michael's face flushed. This attitude is exactly what Dad was talking about. You're being deliberately difficult. I'm being realistic. Michael, do you know what percentage of our revenue comes from our top 5 clients? That's what the transition meetings are for. 87%. Do you know why those clients chose TechFlow over our competitors? Because we have superior technology. Because I spent 3 years personally managing their implementations. Because when their systems crashed at 2 a.m., I was the one on the phone walking their teams through solutions. Because when they needed custom modifications, I was the one who understood their business well enough to build exactly what they needed. I stood up, feeling something shift inside me. Those relationships don't transfer in a PowerPoint presentation, Michael. They exist because of trust that was earned over years of consistent performance. So, what are you saying? I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not my brother, but a stranger wearing his face. Someone who'd been coached on confidence and authority but had no foundation to support either. I'm saying that knowledge transfer is a two-way street. I can teach you our technical architecture, our operational processes, our strategic roadmap, but I can't transfer my relationships or my reputation. Those belong to me. Dad said you might be difficult about this. Did he? What else did Dad say about managing your difficult sister? Michael shifted uncomfortably. He said you might try to sabotage the transition out of spite. The words hit me like a physical blow. Sabotage. Spite. As if protecting my life's work was somehow vindictive rather than rational. Michael, I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. I have no intention of sabotaging anything, but I also have no intention of handing over my relationships, my reputation, or my intellectual property to someone who hasn't earned them. Those belong to the company. No, they don't. The patents are in my name. The client relationships are personal. The strategic vision exists in my head. And as of right now, I'm the only person in this building who understands how all the pieces fit together. Sarah was watching this exchange with fascination, probably filing away every word for later analysis. What do you want, Rebecca? For the first time since yesterday's dinner, I smiled. I want exactly what Dad taught me to want. I want to build something meaningful. I want to be fairly compensated for my contributions. And I want to work with people who respect competence over nepotism. And if TechFlow can't provide that, then I'll find somewhere that can. Michael stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him processing the implications of my words. You wouldn't. Wouldn't what? You wouldn't leave? This company is your whole life. You're right, Michael. This company has been my whole life. But maybe it's time for me to have a life that belongs to me instead of being borrowed from someone else's vision of what I should want. After Michael left, Sarah closed the door again and sat back down. Rebecca, I need to ask you something directly. Are you planning to leave TechFlow? I looked out my office window at the San Francisco Bay, thinking about the garage where this all started. The late nights, the early mornings, the constant pressure to prove myself worthy of my father's investment. The assumption that I should be grateful for the opportunity to build his legacy rather than my own. Sarah, what would you do if someone handed your life's work to a person who hadn't earned it? I'd burn it all down and start over. Even if it meant walking away from everything you'd built? Especially then, because if I don't control what I built, then I didn't really build anything. I just did the work for someone else's benefit. I turned back to her. I need to ask you something, and I need you to think very carefully before you answer. If someone were to start a new company, hypothetically, focused on enterprise software solutions with a team of people who actually understood the business, would that be something you might be interested in? Sarah grinned. Hypothetically, that sounds like the best job opportunity I've heard in years. Good, because I think it's time I stopped hypothetically thinking and started actually planning. That evening, I sat in my home office with a legal pad, my laptop, and a glass of wine I wasn't drinking. The documentation project had grown into something much more comprehensive: patent portfolios, client contact information, technical specifications that existed only in my head, revenue projections for a company that didn't exist yet. But most importantly, I had a list of names: Sarah from finance, David from engineering, Marcus from sales, 3 other senior developers, my assistant Janet, who'd been with me for 8 years, people who'd built TechFlow alongside me, who understood that competence mattered more than bloodlines, people who might be interested in building something new. At 11 p.m., my phone rang. Dad's name on the caller ID. Rebecca, Michael told me about your conversation today. I'm sure he did. This attitude has to stop. You're being unfair to your brother and destructive to the company. Dad, I'm being realistic about the situation you created. Michael wants to run TechFlow? Fine. But he'll have to actually learn how to run it instead of expecting me to gift wrap 12 years of knowledge for him. Those relationships belong to TechFlow. No, they don't. My reputation belongs to me. My technical expertise belongs to me. My understanding of our clients' needs belongs to me. TechFlow owns our product and our infrastructure, but it doesn't own me. There was a long pause. What exactly are you threatening, Rebecca? I'm not threatening anything. I'm simply clarifying what assets are actually transferable and what assets walk out the door with me if I choose to leave. You can't leave. Your non-compete prevents me from working for direct competitors or soliciting TechFlow employees for 2 years. It doesn't prevent me from starting an innovative new company in adjacent market spaces. Jennifer Chen was very clear about that distinction. Another pause, longer this time. Rebecca, you're talking about destroying everything we built together. No, Dad, you destroyed everything we built together when you decided my 12 years of sacrifice were worth less than Michael's family connections. I'm talking about building something new that can't be taken away from me. This is blackmail. This is capitalism. You taught me that business is about leverage and value creation. Well, I've created a lot of value, and now I understand my leverage. What do you want? I smiled in the darkness of my office. I want exactly what you and Michael want. I want to run a company where I'm valued for my contributions rather than tolerated as a transition manager. And if we reconsider the CEO transition? Too late for that, Dad. You made your choice at Sunday dinner. Now I'm making mine. The next morning, I arrived at TechFlow early and sent 12 carefully crafted text messages to 12 key employees. The message was simple. Coffee this morning? I have a business opportunity that might interest you. By noon, I had 11 yes responses. By Friday, I had the foundation of a new company. And by the following Monday, TechFlow discovered what happens when you try to run a company after losing everyone who actually understood how to run it.